Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your cure for a case of the Mondays. That was a cheesy line. I apologize. I'm not going to stop and redo it. Welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. I am in a little bit of a weird mood. What can I say? It has been a weekend of chores. Garage cleaning chores. So I might be a little bit out of it. But punctuating that weekend of hard labor in the garage was some sobering real estate research that I'm going to share with you today because I think it's an interesting point to make. Inventory numbers. They've done something interesting. And you know me, baby. I'm all about the pivot points. What are those points where markets change and go a slightly different direction? Those are usually points you want to pay attention to, and I believe we are in one of those. So stick with me. We're going to spend the next few minutes chatting about it. See if we can't figure out if it means anything significant that we can use to make better decisions, whether we're buying, selling, or investing in real estate. So stick with me. Before we get into the juicy tidbits, do remember that I am a real estate broker in Silicon Valley, and if you have any dreams or goals that you're trying to achieve in real estate, I would love to help you do that. To get started, just head on over to soldbyrobert.com. From there, you've got a lot of choices. If you don't want to talk to me, but you do want to start your research into real estate, whether it is to find out the current value of your home, or if you'd like to start doing some searching in different marketplaces, you'll find it on the very front page, top of the page, above the fold, are the two best tools around for doing that. One is an automated tool. You tell it your address, and it'll give you the estimated value of your home. This has turned out to be what I think is slightly more accurate than a lot of the other ones you'll find on the internet, but take a look at it. The other one is a tool that simply lets you get access to searching for homes like a real estate agent would, and being able to set up those searches pretty dynamically without ever having to interact with an agent. So maybe you're super early in the process. You just want to really get started, start poking around. Those are two great tools for doing that. And then, of course, if you'd like to reach out to me directly, just again, go to soldbyrobert.com, click on Contact Robert, jump right in. Okay, the shameless self-promotion is now over. Let's talk about real estate. And as I alluded to earlier, the big number this week is inventory. Now, the Association of Realtors puts out a weekly housing trends data thing. I don't frequently make a show about that, and I can't even remember the last time I did, primarily because there's really nothing horribly sexy in them, right? I don't find anything usually revealing in those reports or something that really should make you stop and take note. Now, for those of you who are big-time number geeks, one thing you might want to do is join me for my monthly coffee and real estate live chat. Now, I do those on Facebook, but you can now also view them on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I think I'm also doing it on Twitch. I'm not sure why I added Twitch to that mix, but on just about all the various methods of accessing video content, live video content, you're going to be able to find it. So feel free to check it out. It's always been on Facebook Live, and you can ask questions. We cover in much more detail some of the numbers we're going to cover in today's show. But let's jump in and first hit what are the big points? What are the main takeaways from this Realtor.com article that should have you thinking? And it's honestly what I want you to do. The goal here is for you to think about what this might mean for you. Because while I'm going to compare this to my local Santa Clara County market by comparing and contrasting the numbers reported to my local market, I know I have lots of listeners that are nowhere near Santa Clara County. But I want you to be aware of these numbers so that you can then get some insights into your local numbers and see what's happening in your marketplace, because that's going to be important data for you to make a good decision, whether it's time to sell, whether it's time to buy, whether it's time to invest. For my money, it's always time to invest. You just need to change the nature of the investment to make sense in a market. But it's always, I think, a good bet to invest in real estate if you're doing it smartly. But let's jump in and start with the first, which is really the headline number. Now, remember, this is nationally. 11% increase in overall home inventory when compared to the same time last year. So basically the May time period at the same time last year. Now, they're talking about data for the end of the week, for the end of a week in May. I'm comparing this to data for the entire month of May, which I don't think is out of line, particularly since we're talking about percentage increases. And when I compare this to Santa Clara County, what we're seeing is a 24.3% increase in inventory. Let me say that again so you know I'm not misreading. And yes, I had to do the math on this twice because I couldn't believe it was this much. 24.3% increase in overall inventory from May of last year in 2021 to May of this year in 2022. Last year, in the month of May, we had 1,414 homes on the market. This year, we have 1,757 on the market. Now, that's it just in the month. The total homes that were available in that month, that's the percentage increase. So that's a pretty big deal, right? If there's one constant in what we've been talking about, what is the thing? What's the linchpin thing that is defining our market right now? It's inventory. And it's low inventory compared to demand. But we've seen this dramatic increase year over year, and that is a extremely good sign in terms of bringing a little bit more balance to the real estate market. Now let's look at it a little bit more deeply. There are several other pieces of data, and if you'd like to check out this housing trends report from Realtor.com, it will be in the show notes for today's show, and you can find that at soldbyrobert.com. And associated with this this podcast should be a permalink that would take you right to that page. So you should be able to check it out there. New listings. So these are two ways to look at how homes get on the market, right? Or in this particular scenario, how homes are available to purchase in this month. Let's think of it that way. And there's really three ways, right? Homes can be listed and put on the market in that month. Homes can be built and put on the market and available in that month. Or homes can be held over from a previous month, therefore increasing in May the overall inventory because there's the homes that didn't sell in April, right? Does that make sense? That's really the three ways we would want to kind of visualize how the number of homes available in a particular month sort of manifest themselves. And that's what makes this interesting, because while nationally new listings were up 2%, meaning homeowners decided, I want to sell. I want to become a seller. So I listed my home in this month, in the month of May. There was a 2% increase. But in Santa Clara County, that number was only up 1.8. So approximately in the same neighborhood, not so different from the national number that we would call it a big trend breaker, like we would the overall inventory numbers, right? When we've got more than double the percentage increase in overall inventory. So what does that tell us? Well, what's interesting is it tells us that primarily the homes that we're seeing available in the inventory in May of 2022 are coming from homes that didn't sell previously. We have pre-existing inventory that brought itself into the month of May without being under contract or having sold. And that's what makes it interesting. Now, the next number we're going to look at is median listing price. I do not know why anyone would care particularly about median listing price. Now, first of all, median and average are not the same thing, right? If you're looking at what a median is, it is the number at which half of the total occurrences are above it and half of the total occurrences are below it, right? So in other words, if you pick a number and there are 50 homes above that number and 50 homes below that number, or there are 40 homes above that number and 60 homes below it, would not be the median, right? The median would be the point at which half the homes are above and half the homes are below that number. An average is a different number. The average is the total number of homes where you divide that into the sum of all the asking prices for all the homes. That gives you the average, which I think is a far more instructive piece of data. So while they're looking at median, I do not know. Whenever I see someone reporting median, I'm always kind of suspicious they're hiding something or they're trying to hide something. But why even look at listing price to begin with? Listing price just tells you the expectations of sellers. It doesn't tell you really anything about how the market is responding to homes on the market or anything, right? It simply tells you sellers this month believed that their home was worth, on average, or at the median, 18.2% more than it was a year ago, right? So that's the listing price. In Santa Clara County, that number was up 15.4%. Now, if we look at another number, which is the average sales price, we get a little bit more insight, I think, into what's going on. Now, for Santa Clara County, the average home sales price increased 10.8% from the same time last year. So between May of 2021 and May of 2022, we saw a 10.8% increase. Now, while that may sound like a crazy number, it is the lowest crazy number we've had in months. I took a quick look at my numbers going back 6 months, and the next closest is 15% increase from the previous year during the same time frame. So this represents an interesting pivot. Not only is it an interesting pivot from the standpoint of the lowest increase when compared to the same time last year for probably a year, it is also lower than last month's average sales price. So it's not a huge difference, but remember, this is a pretty good sample size. If you would like to, you can take a look at the data that I pulled out of the MLS. This is for all of Santa Clara County, and it represents calculating these numbers against all single-family condominium and townhomes to the tune of 19,441 listings. So there's enough of a sample size here that this isn't a fluke. But the average sales price was $1,885,173 in May. In April, the average sales price was $1,893,848. So a good chunk lower, right? From 90, we lost almost $10,000 on the average sales price. Now, we have seen other months where this kind of thing has happened, where they've sort of gone one direction or another, but not by these kind of substantial amounts. So this smells like an interesting pivot point for our market. Now, if we want to go ahead and talk median, again, median is, I suppose, useful in terms of understanding where the weight of prices are. The median price in Santa Clara County was up 14.3% from the same time last year when comparing May to May, with the median in 2021 being 1.4 million and the median in 2022 being 1.6 million. But I think that this sales number average is far more useful for us because it represents an interesting shift in what's happening in the market. So what does this mean to all of us out there, buyers, sellers, investors? What does this number tell us? Well, first, it tells us there is absolutely, what we discussed on this show was that the first signs we would see, or at least one of the likely things to happen in the current climate, would be for there to be a slowdown in the increase in home prices or home sales prices. Well, this is that. This is absolutely a slowdown, particularly when compared to the same time last year. And as we're comparing that change from year to year, this is the lowest increase we've seen in a very long time. Now, we will have a much deeper conversation about this in this month's Coffee and Real Estate, and we do those on the third Saturday of every month. So feel free to head on over. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for today's show. So head on over to Sold by Robert. If you do go to Sold by Robert to get more information, if you scroll down a little bit, that event gets its own little bit of real estate on the front page of the website. So there's a link to it. There's a countdown telling you how many days until it's supposed to happen. But again, it's the third Saturday of every month starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'd love to see you there. And bring your questions. I'm always happy to cover the usual information or the latest news that's covering our real estate market, both nationally and locally, that we should be paying attention to. But what I really love is answering folks' questions. So feel free to jump in and ask whatever is on your mind. But in terms of what we should be thinking as buyers, sellers, and investors, number one, as we've been talking about, let's start with investors. Start evaluating your holdings. If you've been thinking about taking advantage of the up market, this may be the time to do it. It may be the time to pull out your equity and move on, and it may either immediately invest in something in another market that you're super excited about, or hold it. I don't think there's any question that there's a very, very good chance that this could be the first sign of a slowdown. And for my money, it is. If I had a list of things to watch out for, and really the things we've been talking about on this show, this would be the first on my checklist. And what's interesting is it's happening in May. Now, think about what May is, right? May is considered one of the top 2 or 3 months in which to do real estate business for sellers. And to think that we didn't see a big jump in May really kind of surprises me. And the fact that we're actually seeing a number that is lower than May of, that we're seeing from April of last month. In other words, last month in April. Did I say that correctly before? Just so I'm clear, when I say that the average price went down, I'm comparing it to April of 2022, right? So that's what makes it even more interesting, is that as we go linearly and just look back over our shoulder at the last month, we see that the price has gone down almost $10,000 on average. Okay. So that's my investor suggestion. And this is really my suggestion for both investors and sellers. Do an assessment of where you are on your property. If selling your property was in the cards for you for whatever reason in the next year, if there is something coming up, whether it's your career or a big life change or something that is going to happen in the next year, and you're not in a scenario where you can say, you know what, when the time comes, the market is down enough that you don't think it makes sense for you to sell. If you're in one of those scenarios where you can hold on to it, go ahead and hold on to it. History has shown that really if you have the time to wait, a market will always recover. But if you don't have that time, or you don't want to wait and you have things you want to do now, also remember the utility of that asset, right? The utility of that money. It may have more utility for you to have that money now and be able to do something with it than to have to wait several years, and the lost opportunity cost would need to be calculated in, right? So just have that honest conversation with yourself and assess where you are. Now, for buyers, what does this mean? Well, it's going to be interesting. If you're in Santa Clara County and you see this, there's a couple of things running through your head, because remember, we also have to grok that these are homes that are still selling for over asking price, right? I've been I don't usually like to assemble all the data right at the beginning of the month, because I often find that the MLS system makes corrections to the numbers at the end of the month. And sometimes if I do it too early, I end up getting bad numbers. But in terms of what we saw in May, in terms of percent over or under asking price, we saw that in Santa Clara County, folks were getting about 11.6% over asking price, which is a 3.1% increase from the same time last year. So that does continue to indicate that on average, homes are selling for above asking price, right? And that further implies multiple offers. However, because of what we're seeing, I think it also implies that this is happening less frequently than it was before. So if 90%, because even when things were going nuts, 100% of homes weren't selling with multiple offers, right? If we were to suppose that, say, 85 to 90% of homes that went on the market in the craziest times over the last year were selling with crazy multiple offers and getting way over asking, which was happening, I think that what we can say now is that number's lower. Maybe it's 70%, maybe it's 60% of homes are selling with very multiple offers, which also implies that you're no longer, as a buyer, forced to go into this corner where super challenged homes are, right? Because the ones that were existing in that 10-15% range that weren't selling for multiple offers were ones that had substantial challenges, right? Even some of the ones that have substantial challenges. Remember, we talked about homes that were almost burnt to the ground that sold for over asking price. But right now, I think this means that for you buyers out there, there are potential windows of opportunity for you to be able to purchase in a much more sane way than previously, where your strategy up until now has had to be, I just want my offer to win. The strategy wasn't get me the lowest price. That strategy should always be there. But the strategy was, how can I architect an offer so I have the highest probability of acceptance? Weighing all the factors that will influence that offer, right? With obviously one of the top ones being the amount of your offer. But as we've talked about before, I have proven in my own personal business that you can be the one who wins the offer equation that goes on in a seller's head when they're looking at offers. You can be the one who wins even if you're not the top price offer. That's a completely different topic, which we've covered before. But just to point that out, I'll always be thinking that, right? So as things are right now, I think that there are going to be more and more homes that you're going to be able to have an option on than previous months. And what's crazy is we're having this conversation in June. May and June are supposed to be the hot months, right? I think nationally, June is the most profitable month for sellers to sell their home. Can't wait to see if that turns out to be the case this year. Comparing June of this year to June of last year is going to be amazing. Now, of course, with the crazy market, we've seen that starts a much earlier. April, May have been super hot in past months. In fact, I ran the numbers once a couple of years ago, and in Morgan Hill and other areas of Santa Clara County, June actually got edged out by May in a lot of cases, and April was frequently right up there with them. So the fact that we are where we are in our local market with what we know about our market, the fact that we're in a place where we're able to say the average sales price in May of 2022 was lower than the average sales price in April of 2022 is a shocker. And the fact that we only had, and I realize people outside of Silicon Valley are wondering if I'm insane for phrasing it this way, but the fact that we only had a 10.8% increase in the average home sales price in May is also a shocker, since that is so low compared to past months. In fact, I can pull that up right now. This is data I've been looking at. I'm actually trying to, I usually don't track it this way, but when I look at April and I see that we had an average sales price of that was a 10.8 increase from the previous year. In April, that number was 15.9. In March, that number was 18%. In February, that number was 16.5%. In January, that number was 18.7%. In December, that number was 20.5%. In November, that number was 13.4%. And that's November, right? That's Thanksgiving. That is when the market is at its lowest, right? But again, remember, we're comparing same time previous year, so that argument doesn't hold a whole lot of water. October, 15.6% increase from the previous year. September, 13.1% increase. And that really moved over strangely. Sales price, 13.3% for August of 2021. For July, 12.8%. Do I have any more, or is that all I have? I do have June of 2021. Average sales price, 19%. May of 2021, 16.2%. So the lowest going back a year by 4 points, 3 points, 3 percentage points, I think, because we had a 13% in there. Let's see where that goes. But everyone mark this one. Put this down in your little journal of things to watch out for in the real estate market in the coming months, because I think it's going to end up being a big deal. Enough so that I think it is worth you considering it as a milestone in your journey of real estate to start exploring your options, because we may be seeing things changing a lot in the coming months. Okay, I think we covered what everybody should be thinking in terms of thinking for themselves about what might be on the horizon for us. And as always, the goal here is to leave more value on the table than you've invested in your time, and I absolutely hope we've done that. I'm absolutely going to be keeping my eye on this one, particularly since I've been harping on the inventory argument for so long, and we're actually seeing some of those occurrences happening. It's interesting to see where it's going to go. So I'm obviously going to keep my eye on it, and I'll share all of that with you. All right, everyone. Thanks again for listening. As always, feel free to reach out to me. SoldByRobert.com is the place to do it. Happy to help you in any way I can to let you know what I can offer in terms of bringing your dreams come true in real estate. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to y'all next time.